I don't know how some of these guys in the world like have dogs, breeding programs, jobs, I guess, and
Yeah.
families. How they can pump out as much content as they
I,
do.
I, I often think that too. I just because I've often thought I think the thing I don't see, and maybe this is a bad thing, but I see a lot of these people doing interviews with certain dog people and whatnot, and they're just letting them tell their story, which is good, you know. But I want to see more heavy hitting questions being pushed to some of these breeders, and maybe some of those breeders would pull back and not want that. But I think I think real dog people want to hear like let's get like a heavy hitting question interview with some of these people, really hit them with some tough questions and see what happens. Now again, maybe some breeders wouldn't like that, but I often thought maybe I should start a channel and interview some people and like hit them with the serious questions. But then I'm just like I do not want to sit down, you know, even once a week or even once a month and like film all that. You know, you gotta just too much between dogs, birds, the farm, maintaining everything. It's like almost impossible. So I'm just like, I'll let somebody else go down that rabbit hole. I'll stay in my lane.
What kind of questions do you think are sometimes missing in these interviews? I think this is a good critique for a lot of us.
I'd have to think. I'd have to think on it. Let some come to me. I'm thinking just more like just some of the tougher questions. I don't have one on the tip of my tongue at the moment, but it just seems like a lot of the interviews it's just letting people tell their story, and you'll get on like a tangent of what they like or what they don't like. But I feel like sometimes, and maybe it's just for the course, so maybe it's not all breeds, but I feel like sometimes there's like where you could go and be like, well, why do you do this and not do this, or why do you do that? And I don't know. Just come at the questions or go at them a little bit more aggressive because I feel like it's too easy to paint like a facade when you're telling your story. It's easy to paint this picture of like, oh, I do all of this stuff correct and nothing ever goes wrong, and it's all this like great. Raising dogs is just sunshine and rainbows, and I don't know. Just they never really get into the nitty gritty. And I'm not saying like crazy stuff, but just even just breeding practices and just be like, even if you just picked out a breeding, be like, why, like realistically, why did you do this breeding? Not this. Oh, I know it was this dog's temperament was fantastic, and this dog's temperament and that pedigree. It's like, no, come on, like, because I often find that it's not. People say the temperament they did this breeding for temperament. I don't believe half of that. Or people will say I did this breeding based on the pedigree. I don't believe that either. 90%, and maybe I'm just trying to force the truth out of breeders, but I feel it's just like, why did you really do that breeding? And most of the time, it's just those dogs were they were convenient I had them and I bred them, or this stud was close and I watched different guys with the Corso. They'll have one male. It's nothing to write home about. The dog might have started out his career kind of sketchy and needed worked to have a good temperament. Like it might have started out a little timid, and they had to really open the dog up. But they eventually did. And to me, I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't have bred that dog to start with. But here's my point: is they'll do one breeding, and that's fine. See what the dog throws. I have no problem with that. But then I'll see where they have another female come in heat, another female, 3 or 4 females come in heat, all basically bred the exact same way of the first female that they ran to this male. And I'll be like, I'll ask these guys, I'm like, who are you breeding to that female? Because it might be a female that catches my eye or whatnot. And they're like, oh, I'm running it to the same male. And they just run 5 females all to the same male. And I'm like, I'll ask them. I'll hit guys in the DMs and ask them. I'm like, you couldn't find a better male, or there's nothing better in your area to think to breed to. You're just going to keep sticking everything to this one male. I'm like, why? Sometimes I feel it's just like they have the male and it's easy to just drive them over and breed to this female, or stick this female in the pen and breed it. It's not, there's no deeper thought process of how people really set up breedings or matings. And I don't know, maybe sometimes I just want to give them a little bit more, I don't know, just go at them a little bit more and be like, why'd you really do these? Why are you really making these decisions? Because to me, when I'm looking from the back, I'm like, it's kind of questionable. Yeah, I just find it interesting. I don't know if it. it comes from a side of just more passion than other people. I know you can't judge people's passion and how much work they put in, but I feel like when I'm planning on doing breedings, and I'm not just trying to, toot my own horn or anything, but like my process when I think of what dogs I'm going to be breeding, or when a female comes in heat, I have a bunch of different programs on the computer, or not, I don't have a computer, on the tablet or on the phone, that I have all these dogs entered into a database. And it's kind of an off database. It's nothing that's like, it's not for Corsos. It's just a database that holds pedigrees. You can data entry, all that stuff in, and you can play with it. And so a female will come into heat, and I'll sit there for hours on the phone or the tablet, putting this female to every male, looking at how it lines up on paper, and which is not everything. Obviously, not everything matters on paper, but for the stuff I'm trying to do with the Corsos, a lot of it does matter on the not necessarily the paper side, but I'm just saying how the genes connect. Because here's one thing, and now we're kind of going off, but when I put these dogs in there, I always look at, I put a breeding together, and then I hit the line breeding, and I look at the coefficient of inbreeding, I look at the coefficient of relation, and then I look at the top contributing descendants. So it'll give you like 1 through, I mean, it pretty much gives you every dog in the pedigree, and how much of that blood, even if it's dogs that way back in the 30 years ago to now, how much percentage of each one of those dogs is contributing into the dog that would be bred. And to be honest, like I said, I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but people usually don't care about top contributing descendants at all. They're all about dogs in front of them, dogs in front of them. And I am too, to a certain aspect. But with these courses, I am really trying to like resurrect genes from way back in the pedigree and bring that stuff up front. So when I put these breedings into this database, I'm looking for those top contributing descendants to be old dogs. And this is something I was just talking with Kareem and talking with another guy on the phone with today. Every time I put a breeding into that database and I see, like, I resurrected like a huge percentage of a dog that was 30 years ago to the front of the pedigree, every time I see that and then I execute the breeding and I grow those pups out, the pups have been more and more correct like they look more and more old school. They have more and more traits from those dogs back in the day than they do of their parents. They might look nothing like their parents, and people might be like, well, that's not consistency. But I'm not really breeding on necessarily the dogs that I'm looking at. I am trying to, like I said, resurrect that old blood, that old type from those dogs. And I can't, like I said, people don't like that top contributing descendant, like breeding on that. But every time I've executed that, it has given me the best results for what I'm looking for. Every time I run that, I end up creating a dog, and I'm like, I'm closer. I keep getting, every time I do that, I keep getting closer to the result I'm looking for. Those old type of dogs.
I see how people, why people get so stuck on their yard, because it's convenient, and this culture is so wrapped up in convenience, and I'm I'm a byproduct of that too, so I'm not like completely downgrading that and not understanding that mindset. But I think if you're going to embark on something like breeding dogs, and you're going to do it in a way that is perceived as professional, then you need to probably do what you're doing and have that idea of doing it that way, because you may not be a professional if you're not. You may just be a puppy peddler. And as much as you want to think of yourself as a conscientious breeder or a preservation breeder, if you're just looking what's in front of you or what you can get your hands on, instead of really trying to hone in on stuff, I think it there's a gray line there that I'm not sure what to consider someone like that. But I understand it, because number one, it's expensive, and everybody is gouging everybody, and the dog world is full of backstabbers and liars. So I understand maneuvering in that world is sometimes difficult. And so the easy route is just to go with the dogs that are in your yard or your buddy's yard,
Mhm.
and then call it good. But I think the idea for me, the more and more that I look at it, the more successful breeders out there, whether they are proper breeders and they're actually breeding good dogs, is another question for a different day. But what they're doing is they build their program and they have multiple prongs that they can choose from. That
Mhm.
they got people from all around. They've got their blood everywhere, and they're working with people from multifaceted backgrounds and everywhere. And they have a large enough net that they don't have to worry about finding dogs that they want to use in their yard. They can just say, hey, you know, this person has this male of mine, and we have a deal where I can use that male whenever. That
Mhm.
was our deal when they bought the pup. So you know, people aren't making those deals because they want the money up front instead
Right.
of.
Right.
And I think there's the huge crux of the issue is they're not building their program, they're just selling it.
Correct. Correct.
And that's not business. It's like if you have two coffee shops, one is just selling coffee, but the other one is also selling coffee but building their brand at the same time. And if that means they got to hand out 15, 20 free cups of coffee every day to do it, and they're honing in on the quality and the taste and where they get the coffee beans and everything else, and then they market it through that, who's going to win in the long run?
Right. Right.
And I think that's the big thing now. But unfortunately, well, we're seeing the beginning of the end. I think where people are going to have to start thinking more like you.
Mm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah. I see. I don't know. I see a lot of different things. I see some guys that are trying to get smarter and do it. I see them trying to do better breedings, but then I also see just a massive handful of people just either breeding to the flavor of the month or just breeding what's convenient. Because that's basically in the Corso world. I can't speak on what people are actually how they're doing breedings with some of the other breeds, but with the Corso world, I see it's either the flavor of the month or just what's handy, what's in the backyard, and neither seem to be the right thing to do as far as building a program. That's fine. It's the right thing to do if you want to just sell dogs and make money and all that stuff. If you want to breed to the flavor of the month, of course, you run your female to the best stud that's out there, the most popular stud at the moment. Of course, those pups are going to sell better than if if you use your male or you build a program a certain way, and maybe people don't really know about your male or this or that. It's going to be easier to sell to that flavor of the month. And then also, I see people just using that male that's in the backyard. That why would they drive 4 hours to breed to the better male, or why would they spend $3,500 to breed to the better male to make good or better quality pups to keep something back when they're not even thinking about keeping something back. They're just doing a breeding and going to sell all the pups. And if they happen to get stuck with the last pup of the litter, they'll keep that one and breed that one. But that's the stuff I see. But I think you'll have that forever. I think there'll always be people doing that. You just probably just out of ignorance, or just lack of knowledge. But at least in the course, I don't see enough people really trying to strategize and actually build a program, build a family, build a line, and then go to that step of, okay, now I've built a family of good dogs. Now I can start releasing stuff to the public, or I can start selling some. And even as you're coming up, if you want to sell stuff, I don't mind. I don't expect everybody to keep everything or try to lose money. Only the crazy people like me and a few others are crazy enough to lose money time and time again to build the right thing. But I don't know. I just don't see a lot of it. There's just not a lot of integrity in the Corso breeders. I just see it's a lot of just quick bucks and flipping stuff and hustling the dogs is a lot of what I see.
Yeah, I look at the Corsos like I look Frenchies like a Frenchies like I see people that may not have been like super into the breed, but they saw that the breed was becoming popular, and so they
Mhm.
jumped on it. So their passion for the breed itself is questionable to begin with, and and then on top of that, you have to question the passion for dogs overall is probably not as plentiful as it would be for say somebody like yourself. It it just seems like it's more of a ego driven thing, and a way that they feel like an easy way for them to make money
Mhm. Yeah.
and fulfill their ego at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's all an ego thing. I mean, I'll be honest. It's I think it's an ego thing for everybody, even myself a little bit. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like I always think of it as it's not like it's an ego thing. I'm trying to prove I'm better. It's more maybe it's not ego, but I like the idea of okay, if you don't have children, obviously children are the thing that's going to carry your kind of your legacy, right? Or you hope that they do. You hope that they do. Um, but just coming up in breeding and livestock and stuff. There's I've come across men breeders that been dead 30, 40, 50, 60 years. They're still talked about on a regular basis, but it doesn't matter who. And to me, there's some kind of an allure to that or a draw. I'm like, well, they had to do something right. If their name is still being brought up this many years later, I like the idea of that. So that's always been a kind of a goal. And it might sound crazy. I don't hear anybody ever talk about this, but dogs, birds, I want to be known to having such great animals that when I finally kick the bucket, people are still going to be talking about what he did with the dogs, or they're trying to find those dogs or those birds, or that's kind of what. And maybe that is an ego thing. I don't know necessarily maybe the definition of that, but that's what it is for me. I want to. I'm trying to establish something where they're gonna remember me, in a decade or a few decades or whatever. That's. But I don't know if that's ego or not. But that's something that draws me to breeding quality specimens. It is kind of that sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's big in men who want to succeed in what they do, and I to me that's like leaving a legacy is more
Right. Right.
than just complete ego driven, and we have that drive in us to want to do that, and I think in a way that's what keeps people motivated to keep coming back and doing what they're doing,
Right. Right.
even in a hard, not easy thing to do like breed animals, so um yeah, I think that's just a good natural instinct that you need to have. Again, that's uh, uh, something that I think is in some regards missing
Hmm.
in the dog world. They're not We're not getting people that are wanting to build a legacy. I don't they may not know what they want,
Right.
and
Right.
then we can just conjecture on what their motives are,
Right.
good or bad. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that missing. Um, so, but one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, I've got a little bit of the list. Is where I left off was, is there anybody in Europe with working with the Italian lines or a form of Italian lines that you really like? There's a two part to this question.
Okay.
So any Italian dogs that you really like, they don't have to come from Italy, but is there people doing it right over there,
I guarantee that there's people doing it right over there. I guarantee there is. But what I will stress to anybody watching or anybody that hears me speak of this is it's not the Italians that are on social media or showing these dogs off on certain platforms. It's not those people. Let me tell you, there's probably many people doing it over there right, but guess what? They're probably on farms, don't have social media, doing it the old school way, like it's always been done. I guarantee. Like there's one guy, I don't know if you've seen him, He's on a couple of groups online that Servio Cortez, I think his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Now he doesn't even call his dogs Corsos. He calls them Calabrian something something. I don't know, some Italian stuff. Obviously they are just Corsos, and he just put a kind of a name and a type for where his area is, which is totally fine. But his dogs are the one program where I will say he is on social media. He does show pictures, but this man, from what I can gather, just looking at him, I don't talk to him. He's a straight Italian, doesn't speak, I don't think, any English. But when you can translate what he says on there and see what he's talking about. This man is just a old school farmer. He has a butcher shop. That's what his trade is. He's a butcher, and he's just had dogs for forever. His dad had dogs. His grandfather had dogs. He has all the pictures, all the articles. His dogs have incredible longevity. He's been posting dogs I've been following for 10 years, and he's saying that these dogs are 13, 14, 15 years old. Still reproducing, still breeding. I mean, he's not doing it I don't see him selling and making money, although I will say some people are starting to catch on to his program and bring a couple dogs over here from him, which are fine. That might compromise him in the future, but we will see, the almighty American dollar. But his program, I just see him messing with dogs on his farm, just breeding the old school way, letting the dogs whelp literally in a hole underneath a shed, and the pups look great. The dogs look fantastic, but he's got that very much old rustic look. But also people will say, well, this has got to be, a million-year-old pure breed. His dogs are just like everybody else's, and he even says they're basically a composite breed. They're the old school kind of depressing Neos. They were crossed to some Abruzzi. They were crossed to a little bit of this. I don't want to put anybody out, but I have some exclusive pictures from his yard back in the day. He even had a couple Roddy crosses running around in his yard. You didn't hear from me, but so his dogs are just as much of a mix as somebody else. But just like all these variations of courses that we talk about, the biggest component to his yard is those old school Neos that are holding his dogs together in the look. But that's a program I can point to and say I like a lot of what he's doing. Other than that, I wouldn't know, because the real programs are going on behind the scenes in rural Italy, on farmland, and I wouldn't know nothing about it. But that's what I would just stress, is there's probably many people over there doing it right, but it's not the breeders that have been hustling pups over to the U.S. on social media for the last 30 years.
Wouldn't it be fun if you had you were independently wealthy, and a couple of us went down there in Italy and just try to investigate where we could find the.
I would love to do it, and I've had mixed feelings on that, because I talked to that Cortez dude. Of course, I went back and forth, with translator and sending a message, converting stuff from English to try to talk to him a little bit. And I had the opportunity to buy some dogs from him and get them shipped over here. But the more I thought about it, I was like, as much as, like I said, I like the dogs, and it wasn't even the money. It wasn't even that expensive. He wasn't asking a crazy amount. I mean, obviously shipping's expensive, but it wasn't a crazy amount. It wasn't unrealistic. But I just thought it didn't make sense. The more I really sat and thought about it, I'm like, it's not going to really probably mesh with the dogs I have, even though they share similarities in look. I'm like, his dogs are going to be completely different genetic-wise. I'm like, it just didn't make sense to spend that money to bring dogs over, when I just felt I could just hone in and do it in-house with the dogs I have, and just make a better family than just trying to bring dogs in that are just so drastically unrelated to try to make something. So that's why I just pulled back. But like you said, if I was independently wealthy, would I go over there and maybe buy a few of his dogs and just run them pure? That's more what I would do than me going and get those dogs and crossing them into what I have.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when I win the lottery, I'll buy a few, and then you can run an Italian line and an American line. I got you. But you gotta be you can't take a day off. That's
all right.
In the U.S., is there anybody that's this is the second part? Is there anybody that is utilizing the Italian? Not that you would use these dogs, but that is utilizing the Italian blood and the American blood and mixing them in a way that is conscientious in a way that you say that's not bad.
Well, here's the tricky part to that question. Basically, every dog that's out there already has Italian already infused in it. 90% of the American, I'll just call them the American camps, or the people that are throwing around that term and more picking dogs to the American type, their dogs already have Italian infused in them. I don't see anybody putting fresh Italian into, say, a line and doing anything with it, because it's for the simple fact that I think 90% of the Italian dogs that are coming over, or people are going to picking from, are, again, those social media happy Italian breeders that make it easy to just hustle pups over here. So people see them and they gravitate to them. They get those dogs. And I see people using those into more American type dogs. And I see bad things. I don't see the look. I see just a lot of variation in the litters that come off of that stuff. I don't see anything. I don't see anybody doing anything really good, but I think it's because they're not getting quality specimens from over there. They're getting those, show winners, or the dogs that are being hyped up or campaigned heavy over there, but they're really not truly quality specimens, or probably not even truly a Corso at the end of the day. But I will say there's numerous American lines that have quite a bit of Italian that was put in that are still throwing pretty high quality looking and acting dogs. So I hope that answers it. It's a little confusing, but
No. Yeah, the newer style Italian dogs are just not up to snuff, basically.
Well, and not even that. I've seen probably 10 years ago, maybe more, people bringing over dogs that were less than desirable, in my opinion, crossing them into a primarily American line, and then somewhat back crossing to the American stuff, and producing good quality dogs. But it's the Italian stuff looks to me on paper, it was only put in there for an out, and then it was just they were trying to breed it out. It was just to get hybrid vigor or just get a shot of new blood, and they were quickly trying to breed that stuff back out. And that's the only reason the dogs look good, is because I didn't like the 50-50 crosses. I only liked it when they kicked that stuff out and it was basically back to 3/4 pure American, that the dog was starting to look good again. So I don't know, that's, but right there's the point. And this goes back to the first video we did. The Italian dogs, people are using them because it's the only thing they can get their hands on. If you have American dogs, there's not that many American dogs, and all the American dogs, for the most part, that are out there for the general public to get their hands on, are all very closely related. There's only several camps that you can get dogs from that are American. So they grab these Italian dogs for whatever it is, an outcross to freshen up blood, or they can just get their hands on it. That's the only reason they're doing it. When it goes back to what I was saying, I don't even want to use that stuff because it's so heavily contaminated. I would rather outcross to another established breed, like the 3 that were in the American dogs, because it would be a cleaner and a better meshing outcross than just using this other low quality dog just because it's papered a Connie Corso.
No, I respect that for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting thing there, because when you got a bottleneck,
right?
Where do you go? And
that was the problem with the American lines. Not to cut you off, but so till he started it, it came down, and yes, there was a couple people that infused some stuff. A little bit of new rock came in, a little bit of new neo came in, but then that was it. So it really only stemmed off maybe, I'm going to say, like, really primarily two, three lines. Well, now we're 30 years later on those 2-3 lines. Everything's kind of related. Where do you go but to the import? But all the import that's over here is low quality. So what else do you do? Breed yourself into a corner, or use the Italian because it's the only other thing that's viable to cross to, so you don't become a laughing stock, or you don't have to go off paper, or you don't have to hang papers. It's back to the thing I told you. You kind of get forced to be unethical by getting forced into using those kind of having to use those kind of animals.
Yeah, so even a Cane Depressa would be considered a no-no, right?
Yeah, yeah. Anything that's not not registered with whatever the kennel clubs are as a quote unquote Corso. But that's why I see this. This is getting to another topic. I don't want to go down there, but I'm just going to throw it out. Of you see these people that are clearly hanging papers, and that's fine, whatever. But you see the smarter breeders where they're not dumb. They're not going to use those low quality Italian dogs. They're going to go to the person that's fresh hanging, grab one of those because it's papered, and so they won't get in trouble. But they sure as all get out will go use one of them. And I don't know if I can say I respect it, but it's a smarter play to use a paper dog that's the papers are hung, but it's a cleaner outcross than going to using those contaminated, Italian dogs or show dogs or whatever you want to say.
That's a hard one for me because I try to be an ethical person. I try to walk that line. I mean, sometimes I'm human, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to break the rules, and professionally I have to walk that line, right?
Right. Correct.
But I get the idea that there are sometimes that the rule book and is unrealistic, and that's you may have to step over the line to get to the desired outcome. Yeah, but that to me, it's like, yeah, like you said, I don't mind. It's not that I don't mind. I understand why somebody would do that.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
limiting their risk, but at the same time, they're perpetuating the
Yeah,
paper.
kind of the lies or the fraud. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand. Like you said, I want to be the most ethical breeder. But we kind of touched on the first video. But I want to be the most ethical. But it seems like the dog world is. I see why people are being unethical because they're almost being forced into that position due to the closed stud book or just the lack of quality dogs. And if you really want to make high quality specimens, why would I be compromised and be forced to use these dogs? Because if I don't use them, I'll just breed myself into the ground if I stick within my line or my family. So it's a slippery slope. Hopefully we see something come about where that changes in the next few or several years. But I don't know who's going to step to the plate and create a club or an association that would register dogs and allow breed outcrosses. Don't quote me, but I thought about it. I think about it often, doing something like that. But I don't know. Like to see it, but I don't know who's going to step up or who's actually going to do it, and then who's going to be willing to take part. Who's going to be afraid to take part or not.
I think that unfortunately we're so decompartmentalized as far as like how we operate. Like we really promote the people thinking outside the box, and we really want these independent, free thinkers. But when it comes down to us checking that box, we go with the two choices that we have.
Right.
That's voting, and that's everything in life. It's
Yep. Correct.
And unfortunately, it's we've got a lot of big talkers and not enough real renegades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to be somebody that would be willing to withstand the blowback from that, and that would be not a short-term blowback; it'd be long-term.
I can only imagine that's what I hate to say it, but that's what kind of separates the men from the boys in the dog world nowadays. Almost, it really does. Like that's why I see more people hitting the band dog train, because it's such a free space to do what you want with the dogs. for the most part. And to be honest, the more programs I see, just before I got on here with you, I was lurking the Instagram, and I came across this. I guess what he's doing is making almost like an American Bulldog, but he's used American Bulldog, he's used American Pit Bull Terrier, and I think he said German Rottweiler, and he blended that all in, and it's basically an American Bulldog type of sorts. And first time I came across his page, I'm looking at it, I read the description, and then I'm looking at the dogs, and I'm like, these dogs look incredible. Like they're built correctly. They look like they naturally can do everything a dog should do and then some, but they're just a composite breed or a band dog or whatever. There's also another guy I follow. He crosses high quality Tosa Inu and American Pit Bull Terrier, and he's blended those into basically a line of dogs. Again, some of my favorite programs I see out in the open are guys that have just blended multiple quality breeds and made a specimen all their own. And maybe it's because all those certain dogs remind me somewhat of Corsos, or the older Corsos, but that's the stuff I align with more than the stuff I can respect, and I see more quality in those animals than this purebred stuff that's running around.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I know I'm for sure, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I'm the person that put that on the map. Nobody was really saying it. Now they people were somewhat saying that there's a difference between the Corsos that started in America versus Italy, but I believe I was the first person to really start claiming and start speaking this, where these are American line Corso, where that's why I don't even say the name Connie Corso when you're talking about my dogs or the American line. It's strictly just American Corso, and I've done that on purpose to try to start the divide, like try to separate that stuff. But I definitely think that, I have definitely coined that, because nobody was saying that, but now you start lurking the Instagram and the social media. Now everybody is throwing old American line Corso, or in their stuff, and I'm like, you weren't saying that a few years ago. That's a new, because everybody, the original thing was traditional Corso, then it was rustic. Now I throw the American. Now everybody's using the American. So it's interesting how it's come down the line, but it's definitely something that's changed the last few years. I don't want to throw out people's names, but I have a lot of respect for what Lee Robinson does with his dogs. He just did his own thing, made his own dog, regardless of if I like him, if I don't, whatever. It doesn't matter the little statistics. But he went out, made his own dog.
Yeah.
He's got a count. This man does stuff, from what I can tell, he does stuff on a very high level, and I appreciate that. And he's very methodical in his thinking, and he seems like a very smart man when it comes to breeding dogs and animals. I can respect that. But a lot of people are for that. A lot of people are for the American Sentinel. A lot of them are. But you think about it, it's just a recently made dog, and you think about it, not too far off from the American Corso in a grand scheme of things. I mean, not exactly, but he's used American Pit Bull Terrier. He's used English Mastiff. Is really the only English Mastiff and Tosa is the only difference between his dogs and the Corsos. But he's used American Pit Bull Terrier and used Neapolitan Mastiff. The only thing that he doesn't have is Rottweiler, and the thing we don't really have is English Mastiff. And obviously he leans more towards Pit Bull blood. Majority of his dogs have Pit Bull blood in them now, but you can't argue that he has a lot of success and a lot of people are liking what he's doing. So why wouldn't I be able to eventually in the next few years be like, listen, I'm tired of these clubs. I'm tired of the registration. I'm tired of all this crap. I'm going off on my own. This is the American Corso. I'm going to cross Neo Rot Pit back in if I want. Doesn't mean that this is the other thing that big controversy. Doesn't mean that I can't still keep pure paper dogs on the side. People think that just because you do a crossbreeding over here that you're compromised totally. And I can see the thought process behind that, but clearly I would never do that. It doesn't make any sense. You need that pure family base when you do these crosses. So, of course, if I did decide to go out and start doing my own thing, crossing in the foundation breeds, of course I would still keep a pure sideline family to constantly tap back into, but that's a topic for hopefully down the road. But like I said, I like to think that I'm very realistic and understand what's going on. So I think we all know it's probably going to move there eventually. Eventually, it's probably going to move there because I don't see how I'm going to keep elevating if I'm stuck within a closed stud book and whatnot.
But I'm on the kind of anti-breed club. Scrap what you have now, get rid of the old guard, the good old boys club, and let's get people that are progressively minded in dogs. Not necessarily, not necessarily progressively politically, because I can't stand those people, but people that really think about the dogs and come at it in an intellectual way, and aren't worried about the blowback. People that are truly preservation breeders instead of pretenders, right?
Right.
And so that's my stance in this. I've really come to the conclusion that breed clubs are the downfall of all breeds, and it's not the AKC, it's not the UKC, it's not any of those breed. It's the specific breed clubs.
Right.
You
Correct.
know,
Correct.
it's the French Bulldog Club of America that's making the problems with the French Bulldogs, and then it's the American Bully Kennel Club, which is all encompassing. It's the breed type, it's the breed club and the registry at the same time. So you see it with them. Those kinds of offshoot registries are just a crap show.
Right.
But I really think that the breed clubs are really destroying breeds, and the AKC has actually probably done way more positive things. Yeah, they're a money grab and everything else. We can agree on that, and they don't always act when they should act. But and there's a lot of fruitcakes involved in it. But they're they do a lot of good.
They do.
And I think that it's the breed clubs that are just really just full of crap.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
You could just see the direction, like a dog take a completely different direction, and it could get completely ruined because who's at the top of the leadership of the breed club.
Absolutely.
And that's because it's their style of dogs that they're promoting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I see it. I even think back in the day, obviously I wasn't present, but this is all information that's come down. Back when the ICCF was made, with Ed Hodis and Chrissy, and there was another couple. I'm losing their name right now, but when they made the ICCF, everything was going good until they wanted to start getting recognition from the Italian clubs and get the Italian dogs, and then it's almost like the Italians made them clean up certain things to be allowed to be recognized by them. And then that was another big part where the registry or the breed club for the Corso kind of was like took a toll, because we always had those pointed dogs. We always had those certain colors and certain looks. And then the Italians were like, we don't mess with pointed dogs. So you need to clean that up out of your stuff. And then that's when it was like, oh, now points is a no-no, even though they've been in every litter to this day, but now they're a no-no. And it was interesting when the Italians started pushing the ICCF to do certain things so that they could be aligned and mesh and all that stuff. And that's, again, breed club politics kind of ruining the dogs, right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting topic that we kind of touched on through Messenger, is the color. What do you see how that's playing out today, and where some of that is just completely like misguided?
Well, and this is a very age old battle between the Corso community. Is like, clearly in the American dogs we obviously have Rottweiler, so of course we're going to get points. We've gotten points since day one in the American dogs, but let's not forget the Italians also had points from day one. They're one of their biggest studs. Plud was a pointed dog. There were several pointed dogs. Like a lot of dogs off Plud came pointed, Not to mention that we think that there's, some Rottweiler influence in blood, because a lot of his offspring come down looking very similar to American dogs. Very similar. I have some pictures side by side that you could look at and be like, these dogs look like they could have came out of the same bloodline. But I don't know why or when, they started outlawing the points. I mean, it was clearly back in the 90s. Is like people started pulling away from, we don't want pointed dogs because, I don't know, just because of reference to the Rottweiler, I guess. But I don't understand why why points aren't allowed or why points are looked down on when it's been in both breeds since the very beginning, right off the rip. In there. Why outlaw that, or why outlaw certain colors because of that? I don't get it. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. It's almost all ancient breeds have points in them. Every dog breed throws points. Almost, I've seen every dog breed. You see it: American Pit Bull Terriers, Borbals, Corsos, obviously the Rottweiler and the Doberman. Been pointed for who knows how long. Tibetan Mastiffs, all those different old land race dogs, all through points. So it's in the dogs. So I don't see why they won't let you use them or show them or whatever. Everybody's got this phobia of pointed dogs when most of the pointed dogs, almost every pointed dog I've ever seen, I believe points is linked to certain phenotypical traits, because almost every pointed specimen I've seen has been better than the blue dog or the brindle dog or it seems like every pointed dog I've seen, the phenotype is incredible. Great top line, strong muscular rear with great angulation, like obviously synonymous kind of with Rottweiler traits. But I see great physical characteristics with pointed dogs, but the Corso community has just written them off. I don't know why. Personally, when you go back and look at some of the old dogs, like there was an old American dog named, I think it was Guardia's Numero Uno, old Corso. He was pointed, looked incredible. I mean, he basically looked like a pointed Neo, but the dog was just super cool looking. And I think he was like the first Corso to get like a canine good citizenship. And yeah, he had multiple titles. He seemed like a quality dog. But yeah, I don't know where it became a thing to write him off, but I've heard all kinds of stories. I've heard of Italians producing whole pointed litters, but they won't admit to it. They just sweep that litter underneath the rug and don't say anything about it. And even certain American people doing the same thing, producing heavy amounts of points and just disappearing. And then it's crazy because now come to current time, the points went through a phase between the 90s and I don't know. I want to say up until 5-6 years ago, everybody hated them. Nobody would touch a pointed dog. Now all of a sudden, the big breeders from back in the 90s, current breeders, and everybody in between is now throwing an immense amount of pointed dogs. They're selling like hotcakes. People are promoting them like hotcakes. It's strange. It's coming back around, but it's just odd that these big breeders for the last 5-6 years, you never seen them produce a pointed dog ever. All of a sudden, they're throwing pointed dogs left, right, and center. So certain stuff doesn't add up, but it's interesting how it's come around.
Yeah, it's funny how the top 5%, when they start doing it, it's cool again.
You're right, exactly.
People don't have their own minds of what's actually going on here. What are they actually seeing?
Right.
For one.
Right.
Number two, why weren't they like just following where good dogs are to begin with, despite
Right. Because my thing with the pointed dogs, I'm like, obviously it's a recessive gene, and yes, if you don't watch yourself, it can take over, and then you'll just be producing pointed dogs all the time. But there's no reason why you can't use a pointed dog, even if the dog's not recognized, you can't show it, what have you. I still believe you can register a pointed dog with any of the clubs. I don't believe that they don't allow you to register them. So you can use them, but just because it's pointed, people will refuse to use a more or a higher quality specimen just because it's pointed. So they'll use the lesser quality individual because it's a more recognized color. It just goes back to ethics and integrity, they will discard the higher quality specimen because it's just not the color that they like. So they'll use a lower quality specimen because it's a recognized color or what have you. Now I'm not saying I'm a color purist, but I do agree that, hey, there's certain colors that haven't ever been in a Corso that you can't just, everybody throws this out. I hate to be, same as the next guy, but everybody throws out, well, Merle was never in a Corso. So clearly, I'm not saying that if you breed it and make it in there and it's a quality specimen, I don't really care, but I don't think that those dogs necessarily should be registered or put in, because it doesn't belong in the breed from the beginning. I'm kind of, maybe that is a purist, but I'm like, the colors that were there from the beginning all should be allowed to be there. You shouldn't be able to take colors out, but I don't like adding fresh colors that were never in any of those 3 or 4 foundation breeds that were put into the Corso in general. And I think most people feel that way. I think people have said that with all kinds of stuff. I've heard Brian from Steadfast. I like him, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out. I like a lot of what he has to say. He seems like a real dog man. But he talks about the pointed staffs. People are like, kind of pull away from that, and then also the liver. They pull away from that. But he throws when he's like, this dog looks better and it acts better. Why shouldn't I keep breeding? I'm like, why isn't everybody on that kind of time?
No, I 100% agree, and I also agree with you with the Merle, even though I'm not a Merle hater.
Right, I am not either.
I think that if you're going to breed Merle dogs and you're going to do it right, and you're going to be conscious about it, and you're going to do all the things that need to be done because of the sensitivity of that sort of thing, more power to you, because you're obviously taking on a bigger challenge.
Right.
But don't. It's not a pure dog, right? And if you're not if you're allowing that, but then you're not allowing a fresh outcross for health and structure and better breed type, then don't play the Merle game. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the hypocrisy is what bothers me the most.
Yes.
More than the color pattern itself and the way they got the color pattern.
Correct.
I could care less about that. It's just the hypocrisy of allowing that in, but not allowing you to do a fresh Rottweiler outcross to better your dogs.
Correct.
And create better Connie Corsos at the end of the day.
Agreed.
So that's my 2 cents.
I agree. No, I agree, because I've seen there's actually a breeder. I don't know if anybody's seen them or taken notice. There's a couple, and I think they're based out of Taiwan. I think it's Taiwan, and they have infused Merle into the Neapolitan Mastiff, and they have these dogs so damn nice. Like, the dog looks like the epitome of a Neapolitan Mastiff. Through and through, the best show quality Neapolitan Mastiff. These people have those dogs full Merle. They're beautiful. Listen, I don't even like necessarily the modern Neapolitan Mastiffs, and I'm not necessarily crazy about Merle, but I don't hate it. I would mess with those dogs because they are just I don't know what the allure to them is, but they have got the breed type so correct with the Merle color. You can't help but respect it. At least me. I cannot help but respect somebody that's put the time in, especially on Neos. As such a breed, to put a fresh color into a Neo is like probably one of the craziest breeds to do something like that. But these people have almost mastered it. I'm watching, I'm like, makes me want to do it. Makes me want to. So that's just something I've seen. I'm like, you have to respect somebody that takes part of a program like that and sees it through and basically perfects it. And it's like, I don't care what it is. If you put time, money, and energy into something like that and get it done, all the respect to you.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part here is that there are people involved in the color breeding that not all and probably not the majority, but that are actually really into the science of breeding, and they're doing things above and beyond that standard breeders aren't doing.
Right, correct.
And I think that's another part of the crux here is those people are coming out with some really great dogs that would probably win in the ring if they could show.
Correct. I would almost say it's not justified, the hating on the Merle, because they only hate on the Merle because it takes this much extra brain power to breed a Merle dog. Honest to God, it's just because it takes this much more effort that people are like, oh, I don't want to have to actually put an effort. So why would I mess with the Merle dogs? That's really what I see. Because other than that, I'm like, as long as you do it right, there's no setback to a Merle, as long as you just do it right. So, but that's most of the dog world right there. That shows you right there. Just because you got to put in this much extra effort, people are like, nah, I'm good. I'll pass.
Talk about the times that you have added stuff outside of your normal idea of what you wanted to do, and how'd that turn out, and what were some of your conclusions, and how has that kind of shaped where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. So there was a few times where I'm like, let me go get a outside Corso bloodline, bring it in, try to mesh it with mine, and see what happens. And I've done that on 3 or 4 occasions with 3 or 4 different bloodlines, some mainstream, some not necessarily a mainstream bloodline, but an unrelated family of dogs to mine. And the short answer for right this second is all turned out horribly. It always has. Both mainstream dogs, mainstream breeder dogs that I crossed in, the dog didn't even know how to whelp. The dog didn't even. So it was a male and female from 2 different bloodlines. The female, the worst mother I've ever seen in my entire life. Dropped puppies everywhere but the whelping box. Didn't pull a single puppy out of the sack. Wouldn't nurse. Wouldn't do nothing. I mean, this is a mature dog, But then you come to find out, after I dig into this, you find out, well, that dog's mother was a terrible mother. That dog's mother was a terrible mother. They just selected terrible mothers and kept, I don't know, bringing the pups up with human intervention, and then selling them. And then I get them, and I'm like, what is this? Not to mention, I ended up trying to save some of the pups, and they developed health issues super early. I was disgusted, so I scrapped all that. A male that I got from another bloodline, adult mature male, wouldn't breed a female. Wouldn't even attempt to breed a female. And this was dog brought up like every other dog, wouldn't breed, wouldn't do nothing. He had some skin issues and certain stuff, and I'm just like, as much as I did value that dog's bloodline, it was from a really good bloodline on paper. I was just like, I can't use this. I'm not going to intervene with the breeding process. I completely disagree with intervening in reproduction. So I got rid of that dog, and then I'm trying to think what some of the other instances were. But yeah, just crossing him in with just horrible results, and basically all due to reproductive or birthing or all that kind of stuff. And you see it again. Another thing that Brian from Steadfast, he talks about the benefit of using good mothers, and he won't use a dog that's not a good mother. And it seems every person that's an ethical dog breeder, you want quality maternal instincts, you want quality mothers. And I see so many of these people from these programs that started based on money, where they bred and used anything and helped anything survive and deliver pups and breed. And this, now those dogs those lines have basically become compromised because they are just riddled with reproductive issues and maternal issues. Like, there was a guy breeding, the mother 3 litters in a row, was a horrible mother, wouldn't help the pups, didn't even want to nurse. And this man bottle raised 3 litters, basically, off this female. Everybody's lining up to buy these pups. Don't get me wrong, the mother looked good, the mother had a good pedigree, whatever. They were nice dogs. But the simple fact that the mother was a horrible mother, time and time again, guys were lining up to buy females off this dog, and I'm intervened multiple times with these guys. I'm like, why would you buy a female off a dog that is a horrible mother? I'm like, it almost makes zero sense. And they never really had an answer, but I kept trying to tell them, I'm like, if anything, you would buy a male, and you would then cross that male to a line of dogs that they have good mothers. If you really must have that breeding, get a male, cross it to a better maternal line of dogs. But these guys don't think past the tip of their nose when it comes to those issues. They all lined up to buy females off a mother that was a horrible mother, and I see so much of that. Nobody's willing, and it's the thing that just shows everybody's kind of compromised because they're not willing to scrap that dog that's a bad mother. It doesn't mean you have to put it down. Just rehome it. It should not be bred. But nobody's really willing to go back to square one. They're too invested. But it's just something, and it goes back to the fact with, I'm going to say it again, because I don't think people are going to clue into the first part that we did is these courses that I had that were in the hands of the Amish, how just deeply rooted natural reproduction and good mothers and natural whelping is in these dogs. I mean, I have not to date, I told you, been doing this since I was a teenager with this same line of dogs. I have not had to help one mother. I haven't had to help one dog deliver puppies. I can go to work, come home, have a litter of pups. Didn't have to touch them, didn't have to watch them, didn't have to do nothing. It actually just happened the other day. I had a female that I bred. I didn't think she was pregnant. I didn't even think she took. She wasn't showing signs. And anyway, I had her set up in the whelping shed, ready to go. But I was almost convinced for the last 5 days that she wasn't pregnant. So I go to work, come home one day, open up the shed and go in a feeder. Boom, right there's pups. I didn't have to. They were all dried, all cleaned off, all nursing. She's laying there with them. Who doesn't want that? Who wants to have to camp out overnight, sit there, put all these extra hours in to help these females deliver? Why wouldn't you want just a dog that pops them out, does everything correctly, and you don't even really have to intervene whatsoever? I just see so much value in that, in good maternal instincts. And I really don't think people are going to clue in when I say how deeply rooted it is within at least the line that I have, how just incredible they are as mothers. With some of those breeds, it's standard practice. You AI, you do C-section. But the thing that, and I'm not saying you give the dog the chance. Some of these dogs are too far gone. You don't even give them the chance to do it. But I've seen several. There's Amish and Mennonite with French bulldogs. They let them breed naturally and they whelp naturally. It's like these new people that get in don't even give the dogs a chance to do it. They're like, we go straight AI, we go straight C-section, when they could have bred naturally, or the mom could have whelped naturally. And you're facilitating the demise of the breed because you're not even giving them the chance. And I'm not saying you should, because it's probably smarter for the new people to just do that, than compromise a dog. But it's just so messed up, and the dog world's just so messed up. I really don't I don't get it, but we're seeing a lot of problems. But I'm telling you, I see more and more it's starting to become a thing where it's like you need the maternal instincts, you need these natural capabilities that dogs for thousands of years all had, and now it's like the modern day breeder is what's killing those instincts or whatnot. But I start to see a revamping of people are getting back to basics and letting the dogs do what they need to do and have the capabilities. But it's going to take some more time for everybody to get behind it. But even still, I see big breeders, not gonna say any names, but even big breeders that stand on good mothers and natural reproduction, but they have this dog that's so good, and it turns out she's not a good mom, and they use her anyway. I see this time guys that preach good mothers, and then their best bitch is a bad mother, and they rear those pups anyway. And I don't know, it just, I can see what, if she comes from a line of good mothers, I can see, there are excuses for ways around it, and there are certain ways you can get around it, but I feel like you really got to put that line in the sand, and either you don't cross it or you do. You can't preach I will not use a bad mom, and then you rear a litter of pups out of a bad mom, and you continue on breeding that. I see some of that too, but for the most part, I see people coming back around to the idea of we need good maternal instincts.
Yeah, I'm a huge supporter, and this is kind of controversial in some regards, especially when we're talking to guys like you that grew up on a working farm kind of. And I'm huge into technology. I really believe technology helps man, and there's more good than bad.
Oh yeah, I can agree.
But at the same time, how do you take the tried and true method and mix it with the modern day? And I think once maybe we find that ability, maybe it might be a little more palatable for some to take that risk.
Right.
But I do think the validity of having dogs be able to do the heavy lifting is important, because that's the sign of a healthy reproductive animal, in my opinion.
Right. I agree.
Talk about the just when the American Corso was founded, just the kinds of dogs that they used and how that differs from a lot of composite breeds today. Like, what set the American Corso apart from what we see today?
Sure. So that's the thing that the age old thing with these American dogs is they're like, oh, it's just a mutt, it's just a a mixed bred, band dog or whatever you want to say. But they don't realize, and I'm not saying it means everything, or it's like the cornerstone, but it's a big help that all three breeds that were put into the American dogs, the Neapolitan Mastiff, the Rottweiler, and the American Pit Bull Terrier, were all the highest class specimens that you could get your hands on. I mean, Santilli already had a full arsenal, full kennel of almost the highest quality Neos that were stateside. He'd been doing it. His grandfather, or maybe his father, had been doing it. They had some of the best Neos around. So obviously, the Neo base was top notch. Well, then the Rottweiler, from what we can figure out, both Rots that were used, there's two different lines of Rottweiler that was used. The first Rottweiler was a straight German import, full German pedigree, full Schutzhund, high grade Rottweiler. She was a full show dog, the whole 9 yards. And that came off of John Craddy's yard in Marion, Ohio, who was a big breeder back in the day. So that was like the first high end dog. The next Rottweiler, basically same deal, full German imported bitch. Obviously this is back in the 90s or late 80s. Full pedigree of just, the Rots were such high quality back then. They were all German imports. They all had great, working title pedigrees, the whole nine. So those two Rots were the best you could probably get your hands on. And then we come to the Pit Bull Terrier. From what I have picture and document evidence. I haven't put any of this out there. I haven't released any of it to the public, but the Pit Bull that was used was the leading, like, best game bred dogs. I mean, it was the predecessor to the Eli lines of modern day. Everybody loves the Eli line. Those old Carver dogs were used into these Corsos. The one, I think it was the grandfather or the father of the Pit Bull that was put into the Corsos was a 7-time winner. So you're just talking the best specimens off of each breed coming together, and it has to stand for something. Like I said, it's not the cornerstone, it's not the end all be all, but the fact is it was the best specimens they had put together to make one, one breed or one type of band dog. You can't argue with it was the best dogs used. And when we look at even the Italian lines, from what I can gather, from what I can understand, well, they didn't use the best Neos in the world. They didn't use the best other dogs. They just grabbed what they had, or what. At least that's what I can find. Maybe some people used better dogs than others, but when you look at the foundation stock for the Italian lines, all those dogs, the dogs that Breber put together, you look at all those dogs, nothing screams high quality like dog. They just look like some random dogs off the farm. Which again, nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, you can pick out a lot of things about those dogs. That some had bad structure, some had the wrong bites, undershot, just different stuff about it. You're like, this doesn't look like the best base you could have started with and then you look at the American lines, and like I said, I don't mean anything's justifiable, but the quality of the base stock that was put into both dogs is drastically different, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just biased, but even other dogs, I see a lot of these other composite breeds, and it's like, I don't see people, even in certain dogs, like, I know aren't the certain bulldog breeds known to be composite breeds, like the Old English is a composite breed basically, and I don't know, the whole
Lappaha Blue Bloods.
So you see all those breeds that are known composite breeds, and still composite breeds to this day that allow people to cross. I don't hear those specific breeders. I hear them saying, I went out and I got a bull mastiff, or I went out and got a dog de Bordeaux, and got this to cross in. You never hear them say, I went out and found the best bull mastiff I could get my hands on, or I did not go out and find the best dog de Bordeaux. Like, they got on correct. Not to say good dogs where you find them. Don't get me wrong, but you kind of pick up where what I'm putting down of, like, they went to Craigslist and just found a nice bull mastiff. They didn't go and really source out the best bull mastiff they could to put in their program. And there's something to be said about the baseline stock that you put in, what avenue or where you go to acquire those dogs.
Well, good choice in soda, by the way. I got the 0 though, because I'm an old man. Yeah, that's the thing that I've had a hard time with, because I can see it in myself. Like, I'm so, like, I live in this little town. Even though I'm like 30 minutes to the city, I never go to the city unless I go to work. Like,
same here.
If I drive 2 miles, it's a headache for me. So to get me to think about expanding my mind to find like the next best dog to breed with mine would at first be daunting. So you'd really have to have it in your mind, like, hey, this is what I want to do, and here's how I'm going to go about it. And
Right. Yeah.
if all the doors get shut, then I have to have plan B and plan C, right? So
Right.
I think that's where a lot of us fall short, is we don't have plan B and plan C, and then we don't exhaust all of our resources and our abilities and try to build rapport with folks, because it is a job. It's tiring. You're not physically pushing and pulling and lifting 100 pounds constantly, but you are, talking to people and interacting and messaging back and forth.
For sure.
And that's really hard for a lot of folks to keep up with and think about. So it's just easier to go down to Joe, who's 10 miles down the road, that has that bull mastiff that you're looking at. But I'm with you. I think that if we really truly were looking for the best outcomes, we would try to build it off of the best dogs,
Yeah. I think you have to. It only makes sense, and then that's like, again, go back to what I said a little bit ago. that's what I think really separates the men from the boys in the dogs. Is I'm the same way as you. I don't want to have to travel no further than I really need to. You know, like you said, I don't. If I never had to leave the farm, trust me, it would not. I would not mind it. You know, I don't really like having to go out and deal with most people in town or in the city or whatever. I'm kind of a recluse, a little bit. But at the same time, but when I get around people that share the same passion, you know, just like here, I can do this. You know,
Same here.
Yeah. So I don't, for the everyday thing, I don't want to travel farther than I do. But I will say that you ask my wife, you know, I'll be like, she'll be like, what are you doing? I'm like, load up. I'm like, we're about to drive 4 hours to get this dog that I found, or we're gonna drive 4 hours to do this breeding, or whatever you have. It could be birds, it could be dogs, you know, you name it. But I've always been that where I'm like, if I want quality and I find it, just about no matter how far it is, I'm getting in the car and I'm going to get it. You know, I've always been about that, because there's no reason starting with unsuperior stock and wasting that much more time to get to where you could be in you know, less than a few steps. You know, why start at the bottom when you could go right almost right to the top? And that might kind of contradict what I said in the first video part, but you always want to start out with quality animals. There's no sense starting way down low and taking time to build up. I mean, maybe there is. I don't know. You get my gist, though. I'm looking at more of the functionality and the health aspects when I say starting with a better stock than just getting Joe's Bull Mastiff down the street. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's so important that people, you know, if they're going to do this, you know, this thing that I've been really like thinking about too is like, you got to have the infrastructure to do this, and you can't cut all the corners all the time, you know.
Right.
If you don't have the infrastructure, you can't cut certain corners, and you got to figure out what your limitations are, and build upon that. And I think people aren't really like realistic about that sort of thing. And so, but yeah, you know, you have the ability, you're on some property, you've got ability to have more than the average person would have as far as dog wise is, and so you can make those decisions that other people can't.
Right.
And unfortunately, those same people that can't make those decisions are still trying to make those decisions, and we're getting the quality that you're getting. And they got to operate in a different way. They have to operate on a smaller, more concise, and more thoughtful process by working with people like you.
Exactly.
And that's why
said this to a man the other day.
And that's why where you're in the mind, I'm thinking dog business wise. Here's you, and here's the rest. You can have a guy that has a property like mine, half an acre, that has 8 dogs, and they're just killers, right? But he's got that limitation. He can't have more than that. So now where is he going with the extra stock? He's got to find somebody in his pipeline. It's just, you got to think like that. And people aren't. They're just like hoarding, and they'll give it to their cousin, and they're hold on to this dog for me. And then
that's something that I get into very often. Is I'm trying to set up some guys underneath me to kind of take a little bit of weight off my shoulders, you know, and kind of help them get a real good start into the, you know, the dogs that they want. But I'll tell you, it is a strenuous task trying to find like-minded people with the same integrity, the same morals, willing to do the right thing to like come on board or to help you out. I struggle with that so like immensely, because it seems like I want to give dogs out left, right, and center. to guys to have other people working on this sideline or working on this sideline, so I can, liquidate a couple dogs, and I don't have to have the amount that I do to have to keep everything going the right way. But it seems like all these other guys, it just always seems that they just want to use you till they don't need you, and then kick you to the curb, run off with whatever the dogs or whatever. It is so hard to find guys to actually help it. So I see why people get forced into, having to feel like they have to hoard and keep dogs within their, family members, or they just have to amass this amount of dogs to operate at the right level, because it's like almost impossible to trust anybody these days to fully come on board and help out without almost compromising you from the inside out. I've tried for so long. I feel like I've exhausted every avenue to try to figure out a way to do it, have other guys, but it's just like everybody wants their piece of the pie. Everybody wants to, because it kind of goes back to ego, or I don't know. I feel like I need other guys like myself, but I again don't want to blow smoke up my ass, but it's hard to find other guys that are like built the same way or have the same fundamentals. It feels like a lot of the guys that want to act like they want to hop on board and help, they just want their name on some dogs, and they just want their piece of the pie, or they just want to take all the work that I've put in, grab a couple dogs, put their name on it, and go do their own thing. They really don't want to lock in and they don't want to lock in and actually try to help the program as a whole. They want their name and their whatever on the dogs, and just do their own thing. They don't want to help a bigger picture. I don't. It's so hard to get to the baseline of why that is, or why I can't find somebody else that really wants to help. I mean, obviously I have Kareem. Kareem's you really don't need more than one person if you can find one really good person, but it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have a few guys, and it's really hard to find guys that really want to do the right thing like I do, or do it the way that I do it, give or take a little.